Okay, it's time to play Where Are We At? Where are we at? We played this before a few times. I think that we've gone 12 times, in fact 13. Probably will release the other one after or even before this one because I've done some videos associated to this recently and just wanted to lay off of it because I had so much on my table. Where are we at? Here's what y'all do is you put down in the comments real quick where you might think that we're at. Just due to what you've been shown. I've shown artifacts and done this same thing. I've shown a statue and done this same thing. Yep, a couple of different statues actually, and done the same thing. One was a building. Done quite a few of these. Where are we at? You know, look at this guy and you might think the ball cap's throwing you off. On the modern day, not necessarily so much at all, you know, no matter where we're talking about, but where do you think we're at? So, go down a little bit more. We got a little gray going and stuff. Great smile on him. Where are we at? There's no trickery here or anything. This person is an endemic and has been for generation after generation after generation in this same area and things. This isn't like, well, he's an Eskimo. No, he's not. He's taking a picture in Alaska or at a boat rally or something. No, not at all. I don't know if the shirt pattern's throwing you off in any way, or again the cap, or behind him there's a guy in a vest and another cap. Where are we at? The answer's a little bit telling of things, but we'll give you another minute or so. You might have thought through it, done the little ping pong with the ideas, and come up with, I'm going to go with this one. Go with that. Write it down here in the comments. There's no wrong answer in a situation like this. In fact, you're not supposed to necessarily get it right off the bat, but of course you'll know the answer in a moment. But just like asking you a magic trick, well, how'd they cut the lady in half? Because they could do that a few different ways. But where are we at when we look at something like this? I'll go on to another picture. Perhaps it'll be a little more revealing. For if we go up here to this video, or picture, I'm sorry, you can see this little kid up in the left-hand corner is 6 years old apparently, wearing a soccer outfit. All these different people. You might notice that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all blondes actually, except for two, and one of those is a redhead, and the other one is kind of blondish auburn. And then there's a dark-haired person down there in the middle, but he's next to a real blonde-haired girl. This is possibly taken at the same little festival thing or whatever they have going on. Where are we at? Some of their costuming might be telling. That flag behind the auburn-haired girl that's second from the left on the top might be more telling. Where are we at? I was given this right after I did a video that's very much related to this. In fact, I had done two within a month. One clarification on the other because I was questioned and called out on a few things I apparently left out, and I was vague enough for someone to try that. So I clarified on the second time. Where are we at? See this lady on the right's holding this little kid, looks like a little English kid or something, and she looks like she could be from Poland or something. I mean, where are we at? Girl with a headband, could be kind of Celtic or something or whatever. Down here in the bottom left, that red-headed kid, that blonde, almost looks like she's from a Nordic land, or what we would think of whenever you just see a picture and took a shot at it. You know, where are we at? If you keep looking, there's something in correlation with all these people. It's not necessarily just the blonde hair, but it's not necessarily just the skin color as per se, but of course some of these people are in shade and back and forth, and so they have a bit of a different appearance. Where are we at? If you look at their eyes, something different about those. Even the dark-haired people and everybody in this picture, over and above the hair color. And if we were to go back down to this man, perhaps you noticed it before as one of the things that you were looking at. When you see him, where are we at? Go ahead and put it down in the bottom. I mean, I'm expecting people to put it down. It's not like I'm going to go around making fun of you. Aha, you got it wrong. Well, that's the whole point of this, is to guess where we're at. And there's going to be a lot of different guesses. I don't know. If I was to tell you that some of the people in this area wear like this more now, where are we at? If I was to tell you that people in this area are known from ancient of times as wearing blue fabric and not necessarily the purple of the Phoenicians or somebody like that, although this is red, where are we at? Side note, whenever I look at her eyes, I mean, of course, they're just incredible here, and they're kind of a sky blue with streaks in them, and then that rust around them, it almost pulls it to a green. And this reminds me of the famous photograph of that Afghani girl. Her name was like Tarim something, Aman Tarim or something, I don't know. And she was on the cover of National Geographic. She was an Afghan type girl, and keeping herself covered just like this a lot, and then exposed herself for the photograph, and it became very famous because her stark, piercing eyes. Where are we at? You probably have a much better clue now, but a lot of people are probably still narrowing it down somewhat, and it does seem confusing if you're in that state. I'm sure of it. Where do you think we're at? All these people right here are endemic to an area that I'm talking about. It's the reason I'm showing them, and of course their accoutrements and stuff in a modern day, as opposed to an artifact or things like that that I've used in other ones. Where are we at? I'm about to spoil it, so maybe just a couple more pictures here, and I'll give you a shot at it. It looks like my youngest niece, when she was about 5 or 6, maybe 7, somewhere around in there. Where are we at? I hear Poland somehow coming through, but oh, there's countries right near that too, but where are we at in reality? Because that makes a different point of it all. This might be a little more telling. Although you see the blue eyes of her throwing off, and the purple veil that she wears here, and all these accoutrements, where would you say that we are? When I went to this place, they had these beads. They were for sale. It's really more of a women's thing. It's pretty cool. They have like rows of them, and they're all bound to a common clasper and back, and so it's not like you're putting on each one individually, but you've got a bunch of them, and then they stay in form. And they put these beads together in this arrangement. So if you look at it, it has this little arrowhead triangle form in it, and it pulls down and even turns into a weird color, green, blue, purple, green, purple, and then yellow at the bottom. And then it goes up the other side, and oh man, there's a twist on the other side, or it would look uniform like the other and have the arrowheads on it. Where are we at? Saw people making this type of stuff when I was where this was. Of course, this was just a craft display type of thing, and they would actually have a girl come out every once in a while and portray her out and show her off like this is all the stuff that we could make. And you weren't supposed to talk to the girl. And a guy out there, and he could answer questions, and whenever the girl came out, everybody walked up, and to a stranger it looked like they were trying to sell her off or something. It was quite odd. You saw what was going on, and someone explained it to you. Where are we at? Well, I think you've got it pretty well figured out. If I was to play the song Kashmir by Led Zeppelin right now, you might get an idea, but that might be more confusing, for Kashmir's more over here, and we're really not talking about that, but there's a similar effect. The question was, in the start of this Quora article sent to me, is why do some Egyptians have blue eyes? I didn't see this in other North African countries as much as in Egypt. So he just asked that out plainly. There's an ad there, but then Walter Smith says he's fascinated by ancient history and genetics, and he says blue eyes are portrayed in ancient Egyptian art and Middle Eastern art. The oldest genes for blue eyes are supposedly dated at 14,000 years and were found in the Caucasus area. Egyptians share a certain amount of autosomal DNA with the Caucasians, of course, of the Caucasus Mountains, so probably some of the ancient Egyptians had blue eyes. Here's a picture of early ancient Egyptians portrayed with blue eyes. I'd like to mention that probably my regulars have seen these far too many times, but these are all of the earliest of dynasties. In fact, some of the Ka statues you're seeing here, like the one on the left and the one at the top, are actually not even plaster done yet. The Ka statues are not even done in that hardened stone that we'll see real soon after these people. They're done in wood, and it's a sacred wood. Sycamore and yew wood is sacred to them, just like it was the elves and all that stuff you hear about. And it's a strange anomaly. The anomaly here is that all of them have these blue eyes, but it's crystal blue eyes. They have actually recreated an eye that is exactly, well, not exactly, but it looks so much like a real eye. I mean, it takes much later before they come up with something like this in any way, and especially the eyeball, or the iris of the eye that's blue, is made from a clear blue crystal, and they match them up for color, it seems. There's a couple that have a little bit of questionable match, but they match them up for color, and then they have this recessed area in back of them and put a dot on the thing that's back behind them, and these things will follow you around the room, and when you line up with it, they're very blue eyes, and it's quite stark and revealing, and it's as all the scribes and the nobility from the earliest of dynasties. There's not a question, but we'll go to look at something else here soon. But of course they say that a lot of the Egyptian DNA showed up to be like Berbers, and that left a lot of people trying to feel questionable, ambiguous, or vague about the reality of what they were saying then, because some people, modern day, they try to compare what's there in a modern day to people that were ancient, and these people, the Berbers and the Mazai, Berber is really kind of a slang thing, and it's kind of talking about barbarian because these guys wouldn't talk Greek. Yeah, and some of the men grew facial hair too. And oh man, if you grow facial hair, you're barbaric. That's where barber comes from, people. But ironically, if you look at the Greeks, they're all clean shaven except for all their real nobility we all know about, Socrates and all the guys. They got it all going on, don't they? In fact, the Egyptians grow these ceremonious little beards. Even though we know that they had all shaved, they would even put on fake beard situations. So, yeah, and the blue people too that live in that same area now, and the connections they have with the Atlas Mountains. You see, because Atlas was the first son of King Neptune, who used to live in that area, and the longest and the oldest of myths in that area of the sea. And how it was a little different than the river, but that god could travel up the seas and do all of those things. It kind of gets blended into the god Happy of the Egyptians, but this is Poseidon of Sidon, or the Phoenicians, or, well, they call themselves Canaan, but, or it could be Neptune that we know about from the Romans, which has this same sea god connection. And it's where I've got my name from. And his son is Atlas, and ironically, these people are living right around the Atlas Mountains today. These are, of course, modern pictures. There's no Photoshop or any trickery here, people. These people are endemic to the area. A lot of people agree on at least 8 to 12,000 years. There's another guy that just kicked in and said at 15,000 we would still say they're the exact same people. There's a verification from older than that, but nobody wants to keep connecting them back older and older, yet the Caucasian presence in North Africa goes back to 315,000 years, with Homo sapiens being found not too far from here in Jebel Irhoud Cave just last year, which added 100,000 years to the timeline of modern humans. It's Homo sapiens showed up directly. So, kind of odd, especially when you figure in the oldest Negroid type phenotype is Asillar man at 4400 BC. And before that, they have protoforms that they found, and it leads all the way back to Irualiru. But Irualiru really is an archaic, or looks like Homo erectus style of humanoid that now they have come out and said there are a lot of mixing going on from people that had already left Africa coming back in, and weirdly there were apparently Homo erectus, which up until recently they were telling everybody, of course, died off 140,000 years ago, that lived on in Africa. But that's another people who might be in question. But as you can see from the reality of that situation, they're not in question with this ideal, but they showed up later. Egyptians are largely Mediterranean people, Iman says, especially in Lower Egypt. Such as traits are found in all Mediterranean countries. However, highest rate of blue eyes is in Kabylie, in Algeria. Well, that's a goddess that we've done a video about and added her into. In fact, I said she deserves her own video. There's so much connective to Kabylie. And it's funny how that connects over to these ancient people, but also she's referring to a modern day and not what was there in the ancients. People keep trying to do that for some reason, and it's not the same. You can see that around the world. There's been a lot of migration and change, and we'll say inside the last 4,000, 5,000 years quite a bit, but also a lot just recently. Geography, Liz says, has little to do with how a country's people would look like. Just because Egypt is in North Africa doesn't mean the people have to look black. In fact, Egypt's majority ethnic groups are Arabs, then Bedouins. Well, let me add in here too that Bedouin has a component, like the Beja and stuff do, that are black, but that black component is a Nilotic type or a Dinka type, much like the people that live in the Horn nowadays. But that has no bearing who were there a long time ago. And they're all admixed too. And they've genetically found, and how long ago that goes. And it shows you that that wasn't really what was going on before. But Bedouins are also not related to this Congoids, or what we call West Africans. They're also not related to far sub-Saharan Africans that we know of today as like the Khoisan. Although what has migrated all the way down into South Africa is more of a Congoid type, and they were never really there. They were back up here, basically around the Congo and so on in East Africa, but that's more recent. Let's go on with this. While it's common to see blue-eyed people in Egypt, they do exist still. Blue eyes exist everywhere, not just in Europe or in countries where you assume it to be. The only place where blue eyes is very, very uncommon is East Asia. Yeah, see, you can still find it on Buddha statues, though, and I've showed that in other videos, and it shows you a component and what happened way back when. But they have other strong genetic components that go along with them. In reality here, what they were saying is there's blue eyes in a lot of places, all through the Middle East, all through Europe, and of course in elder times, all the known world. And that's because there were people that were the heralds of civilization that had that trait. Yeah, that everybody's hooked up to. Some 14,000 years ago, they say everybody's related to this guy that's there or whatever. And some have said, well, there's this mutation, it must have happened then, and they found other people and it doesn't happen before that. The odd thing about that is, well, what's before that? And they say, well, there was more of a Mediterranean type, had a little more olive skin. Next thing you know, they're drawing Cheddar Man with mahogany shoe polish, which was a joke, but had a slightly darker skin, wouldn't necessarily have the Nordic gene to be porcelain. Well, I'm not porcelain here, and I'm Irish, so it has no bearing on anything. But yeah, okay, Mediterranean type, Mona Lisa, all that stuff. What are you trying to get at? Well, geneticists have found that every single one that they've been able to get the genetics out of, and it's accumulated quite a few of these early hunter-gatherers that they talk about that are all around before then, and they had blue eyes. All of them had blue eyes. So whenever they try to say blue eyes start at this point because here's a Nordic gene, and it's like, no, I mean, I think you've already beat that with what these other guys are doing here. Neanderthal shows up always with green eyes and red hair, and remarkably, when we finally got the genetics, we went, yeah, they were right. Let's continue. Some reason why Sicilians are in Europe, then why are they as dark as Egyptians? It's because of their Arab genetic mix. You can't just look at the world alone. You really have to open your mind because people are much diverse than you think. It's all genetics, and nobody can change genetics like that. Well, the Moors, when it started out, were those Berbers that we were just looking at. The only problem is the Berbers were about to get run over by Arabic people that came through that are what she's talking about, and that led to Sicilians and so on having that darker gene, which, well, even in movies, is funny things have been said. The guy trying to get shot, wanted to make sure he killed him, said something that's really not true. But in a modern day, you can get people believing all kinds of things, especially if they want to believe all kinds of things. It's all in genetics, and nobody can change genetics like that, though. So did the ancient rulers of Egypt have blonde hair and blue eyes? My friend from Egypt has a brownish skin complexion, but blue eyes, and DNA tests showed most of her ancestry has been in Egypt dating back thousands of years, and not a lot of, and I'm guessing sub-Saharan ancestry, but there might be some, which that'll give you that oliveness, and there's probably an Arab blend with her, and she's got a little more of that blend look to her, yet she can still have the blue eyes, mainly in the Coptic people that are there, and so on. So let's do a verifier here and come out of this. Well, let's see. Wasn't there even a thing there? Oh, yes. I'm sorry. There is something we want to go. It says that Egypt is part of the Muslim world and all of this, and so there's either non-Egyptian transplant, either could account for an influx of blue eyes, trying to write it off, or that's why there's still some of that component there. I say still because I've already showed you blue-eyed people, but these are mostly in Slavic, Turkish, Egyptian, Copts, Corinthian, Abkhazians, and Georgian people. Georgia's up there, while the Caucasus Mountains and the Golden Fleece and all that stuff, which even Herodotus said they were the same people as the Egyptians. But let's continue. Because they're kings, now this is Ryan Lamont, and I want to tell you what his little icon says right there because it's so small. It says, truth sounds like hate to those who hate truth. set that on the picture right in front of you. Ryan Lamont. Because their kings took many European wives, bridesmaids, and concubines, etc. This is why Krauss, so-called European mummies, only have XX chromosomes as proof of this European heritage and not XY chromosomes from the Egyptian man. And for some reason, well, we all know why, he shows a dark-faced person in that. These mummies had high European DNA because males carry more X chromosomes than DNA from their mothers, aka concubines. What we have here is black people dreaming that they could get a white woman. It's become a trophy thing for them if you just want to be all honest about it. And if you want to get more honest, a psychologist a long time ago said that really need that they seem to have on it is that they realize the admix will help something. It won't help them out, but then they could have a kid that would be like that, and that's a weird thing. Now, some people have said that. I didn't say that, but I said they said that. But yeah, let's just continue. So he wants you to believe that they were black people, but then they had European wives. Well, let me explain to you how this works. See, some people don't think through these things they say. So if you had a black person, say he wasn't even admixed like African Americans all are today at a certain amount, and then probably more than that if there's ever been another event. Let's say he wasn't admixed and then he had a wife. That kid would be a 50-50. And if that guy became a king, then he would take a wife, and then he would get to be quarter. And then if we did it again, it would be an eighth, wouldn't it? And then a 16th, and so on. So you're trying to dream that there was a black king once, and within 5-6 dynasties, there's nothing left to even prove it at all. But yeah, we were just looking at the stuff from the earliest of dynasties, and no, it doesn't have any truth with it. I know. They take and handpick little pictures and spread them out on Photoshop and all kinds of darkening to them and try to get you to believe things. But listen, red ochre males and pale females is Caucasian artistic expression of the period as seen in Minoans and Mitanni and Etruscan art of the time, even the Greeks. And we're really not confused about any of those people, now are we? No. And the Libyans are always drawn pale that lived right next to them, but then again, those people to show up are nobility, and then again, they'd probably be more pale. Just due to the natural attrition of things. But Ryan wants truth, and he tells you that truth sounds like hate to those that hate truth, and then he comes out with some crap like this, and you can tell he's trying to prey off of that idea that West Africans even knew Egypt existed. Or that somehow someone snuck in once, but then they all went away. Even this guy talks about French colonialism allowed by British colonialism and lots of tourists and trade with Europe, and Egypt has far more visitors in Europe over the last 200 years than other North African countries, and some of them left their DNA there, if you know what I mean. Nudge, nudge, and I think you do. Well, that could happen, but that's not going to do it. And then genetics says that's not really right, at all. There's a review on King Narmer, but I think it's right, Renee Friedman, and I'm not sure, but I think that's the lady that Egyptologist 7 did a whole debunk on, where her belief in the fact that he might have been perhaps anything but a Caucasian, which all the Egyptians were, and how that would have come about being. But hey, let's look at these North African endemic people. Endemic. And then we're going to talk about Cro-Magnon here in a minute. I guess that's... We showed enough of these Egyptians here. Right here that have these crystal blue eyes. But let's go back here. And so we're going to go to images of that. And you'll see that there's a whole lot of them. And even in the pre-dynastic Nakata series up here, and I've showed this a bunch, and this guy looks kind of like my dad, especially in that photograph. It's weird, some of them, but some of them I'm like, yeah, that looks like my dad. So we get this little thing going on here, and of course the Sumerians had blue eyes and so on, and how it's still connected, and who's who, and what's what, and la-ti-da, and I believe down here might even show up Egyptologist 7's icon, along with these Sumerian people up here and all the statues from ancient, but there's Egyptology 7s. Oh, and then look at these blue-eyed things here. And people try to say, oh, blacks can get blue eyes and things too. Yeah, there's a reason for that too, and people know what it is, so to keep throwing that out there, it just makes you look desperate. Please stop. Or you can continue if you want to, but it's going to be a joke either way for a long time. Let's look at Cro-Magnon. Now, there's probably going to be a bunch of representations and pictures and stuff, some old, some newer that look, but where's the range of Cro-Magnon man? You see, Cro-Magnon man got changed recently because they found the genetics are still here and that haplogroup N is associated with them. Also, T, I believe, comes directly from them, and there's a few others. Oh, I did that wrong. We're going to look at Cro-Magnon range. Where did he go? Well, it's funny that they show you that Caucasians came out of East Africa and either across here boat-wise and stuff, or they have pivot points here, so it could be that. But then there's this other idea they broke out all the way over Asia and India and then do this big loop around somehow. I should probably do a video on the reality of how that's not quite the way it goes either, but yeah, if they put dates on there, then you'd see that it's like, well, that doesn't work out really well either. Let's see if I can find the one I'm talking about that shows you all North African. Okay, so here we go. Here's North African Cro-Magnon range right here. This is all the sites that people who look like this and are known to have had blonde hair, blue eyes, and so on back then. So this whole idea of 14,000 years gets kind of ruined whenever this genetic showed that he had it too. He didn't have a Nordic thing going on though. But he kind of looks like that, doesn't he? Well, he's just not porcelain, but let's continue. For here we see all of North Africa, and there's a lot of sites that Cro-Magnon's been there, and they date back over 35,000 years, and of course all here in Spain and up through France. And we, of course, see all the cave art and everything. What's conspicuous is it's kind of missing all from this end. And it says, well, when they went across from either of these places, whichever way it went, they were again a boating type people that had gone on. And oh yeah, there's also some up in the early British Isles, but even though they date to around 50,000 BC, their DNA, the oldest one that they got the DNA out of was Puglisi Cave, and it was at 29,000 BC, and that person is still alive today. So now he's been changed and renamed to early European modern humans. The weird thing about that also is there are connectives from those to the early Natufian people that lived in what we call Egypt today, before Egypt was ever there, and the Madarian cultures and so on, and the mix with early Caucasoids that were already there, that they even now are saying may or may not have really gone out of Africa and back in, but the Natufians definitely did. And then that mixture of cultures, along with the Sumerian helper kicker, third little notch of some added Tabasco, kick pow, and here we go. Well, of course, these people brought cattle into the area and all those other things, and it made it happen. But so the answer was, where are we? And we were looking at Berbers. And so I don't know if I could type it in. I didn't even check this out, but we're going to look at blue-eyed Berbers. Blonde. Let's just put that out there for pictures and see what it shows. Oh yeah, there's a whole lot more than what we looked at. And somebody in modern day says, oh, they're all coloring their hair and their stuff. You can tell that most of these aren't coloring their hair. You would probably say this gray-haired girl might be. But these are Berbers in the first place. Also, if you'll notice, they have a predominance of blue eyes, some green. I've already seen two with green eyes. Well, that's the same girl. Okay, so one with green eyes. Well, there's the same girl again here. But other than that, oh, here's the picture that we started with. Anya's a channel. Huh, I wonder what they're talking about with those, is these endemic Caucasians here. Well, now they're getting out of Berbers here for sure, and they're talking about all blue-eyed people. In fact, I don't believe all these people are Berbers. I don't even believe that model is a blue-eyed Berber. I think it's showing blue-eyed blonde. Let's see what we get if we take blonde out of it. Before we go, well, so even though they got their face veiled, which might come down, you're endemic Berbers. Yeah, it still exists. It still exists across Afghanistan and so on. In fact, even in these people that are quite mixed, you can see this eye that's not normal that you wouldn't think of to those people. You see a lot of admixed people and wearing that blue that I was talking about. But that's not the people that were there the first time, and that's of course an admix that comes about in later times. You can see the differential in the phenotype. And here we go again. Even in this man, you can see a lighter eye that's endemic to him. And he's kind of proud of it too, by the way. They kind of know how it happened, but then again, in a modern day, and the way America and big things in the big cities work with all those modern spacemen that can't even talk about reality. Isn't that sad and pitiful? There's that guy right there. Yeah, why do some Egyptians and Berbers, that was the question. Look at this girl with blue eyes. She almost has an oriental type look. Could just be the way she's looking and her eyes are cut down. So you'll see this admix off into there, but these are endemic Caucasian North Africans. Yeah, that have been there since Cro-Magnon. In fact, you could say 315,000 years so far. I mean, a few years ago we would have said 200 and something thousand years, just a little over 200, but all of a sudden, pow, they got this other one, 315,000 years, and yes, it's Homo sapiens. It's not even like, oh, here's something turning, and no, they go, no, that's Homo sapiens. Although the modern form of European-looking types don't seem to show up till about 160,000 or more, and they have a big discrepancy on that due to a few little formations around the skull and cranial and there's certain data like that. But other than that situation, we know they're all Caucasoid type people. So yeah, hopefully you got it right, guys. Well, we got it right in the end. These are, and where are we at? Well, we're actually just northeast of the Atlas Mountains, in between there and Morocco, at a festival. At least that's where a couple of those pictures were done at. It's supposed to be a town outside of Morocco, kind of set up for it, and they do things, and tourists are able to watch and do things that's embraced in such a way. Yeah, a lot of songs and happiness and all kinds of things. Peace.